Are mermaids real? I mean, there is a lot of myths about mermaids that I've heard over the years, and I wasn't like a big believer in them, but I'm still like, you know what, maybe they could be. I mean, literally like 90% of the ocean is unexplored, and the parts that were explored, it's not like they had a continuous monitoring system down there. You don't know what's in the ocean. We just know a little bit of the layout. Anyway, somebody left me a comment and they were like, hey, do you take requests? If so, I would like to see a video about mermaids. And I was like, you know what, I'll take requests, I guess. I don't get asked that often. So I decided to do a deep dive into mermaids, and I found quite a few very interesting stories in the past, I don't know, 60 to 80 years, like all the way up to 2012, that are pretty freaking interesting to say the least. Before I get into these, I found these on a website called Folklore Thursday, and it's very interesting because I looked up all the different stories and they're all basically out there. It's not like this one person just made up all these different stories. But besides all that, let's get into the first story. This happened in 1967 in British Columbia, Canada. So the story goes, there was a ferry filled with like 200 different people, and they were traveling down the water whenever they looked over and they seen a mermaid on the freaking beach eating a salmon. Now there was 200 witnesses to this account, but they were close enough that they reported that she had dimples, long blonde hair, was eating a salmon, and a lot of people said that she was extremely beautiful. Now the word got out about this, and less than a week later there was another sighting of presumably the same mermaid. However, the skeptics started coming in with their, oh, it's not real, you don't know what you're seeing, it's probably a manatee, even though a manatee doesn't quite fit that description, but it might to somebody, I don't really know. But anyways, it is a very interesting story because there was a ton of witnesses that had a close-up view of this creature, whatever it was, and I just think that's pretty cool. Now the next one happens in 1998 in Hawaii, which is pretty cool because it's kind of close, you know what I mean, like the years is kind of close. Well, it might not be for some people. Anyways, I'm gonna shut up and get to it. There was a guy, his name was Jeff Locker, and he operates a dive shop called Jack Diving Locker of Kauai. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Anyways, he took a boat full of people and they were about 20 minutes off of the coast whenever they seen a pod of dolphins, which is pretty cool. However, it's not an uncommon occurrence in Hawaii to see a pod of dolphins, but they weren't out there just playing. They were moving through the water. But what really caught their attention was they seen a woman swimming with the dolphins. But like I said, the pod wasn't just going in a circle or anything like that. They were swimming in a direction, and this woman was keeping up with them, which blew people's mind because that's straight up not possible for somebody to swim that freaking fast. Anyways, what really blew their mind is whenever she jumped out of the water because she had a freaking fish tail, and this floored all 10 of them. They were blown away by this. Now the mermaid didn't just disappear after this, she actually breached the water one more time, so they got to see this twice, which is pretty cool. However, after that they were just like, ooh, all amazed and everything else. However, they was like, maybe we're just seeing something or whatever, and they continued on their tour. So they get about an hour off the coast. Jeff's down in the water, he's doing his diving thing, he's hanging out, whatever, whenever he feels something brush by his leg, and this freaks him out. So he whips around whenever he sees that mermaid hauling ass past him. Well, he's like, that's freaking weird. He pulls out his camera to try to get pictures, but she's too far at this point. However, the mermaid stops, turns around, and swims back past him while he's just like trying to click his camera as fast as he can, and he actually caught a pretty neat picture. Now, it was almost like the mermaid was passing by just to be like, yeah, we're out here, but you're not ever going to freaking catch us. And I don't know, I do think it's pretty cool. He did have his photographs sent off, and they were determined not to be like tampered with or anything else. They were original photos, and whatever he caught was actually what was caught. However, they said that it wasn't clear enough evidence to determine that it was in fact a mermaid. Now, this one's really interesting because I happened in 2009, and NBC even got involved with this, which is kind of cool. However, what happened was there was a bunch of villagers that kept saying that they seen a creature that resembled a young girl that would often visit the beach and like do tricks in the water. Like she was just out there playing around, hanging out with all the people, like just off the distance, but she was out there clearly visible, a creature with a tail that was also a girl. So eventually the word started spreading about this. A lot of people started visiting, and the government was like, you know what, this is getting a lot of attention. How about this? We will put out a $1 million reward for anyone who could provide proof of the mermaid. Now, this didn't include capturing it. It simply requires an authentic photo. So NBC decided to do its own investigation and had a film crew stationed at the beach, morning and night, above and below the water, to document the mermaid. Now, the crew claimed that late one night they managed to spot a human figure dipping into the water, then disappearing. However, the research crew did their best to pursue the mermaid, but were unable to trace its location. investigation. Like they just couldn't find it. So anyways, the footage was transferred to the Coastal Oceans Research in Los Angeles to see if it could be authenticated. The center's director said that although it was impossible to unequivocally determine the figure in the footage, it still remains a viable option. This just means it could be, but can't be proven. Tourists and locals are still on the lookout to prove the existence of the mermaid to claim the $1 million reward. And I think that is super freaking interesting because there are tons of myths and lores, like Christopher Columbus claimed he's seen one, even though everybody said it looked like a manatee. But if you read the actual description in the journal, it says that it comes up halfway out of the water, way up out of the water, but it had a really masculine build. Now, I don't know if you've seen manatees, but they don't look like some merman coming up out of the water. And a lot of people are like, yeah, their face looks like no, it doesn't. Look, here's what it looks like. That doesn't, no. But I don't know. There seems to be less sightings, but is that because the rich are eating all the mermaids? Who knows? We don't know. But all I do know is it's really interesting. If you found that interesting, feel free to follow me and hang out or, do whatever you want to do. But just let me know what you think about it. Because I don't know. I think it's cool. Y'all should check out that website too. I thought it was cool. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day and I hope you enjoyed that. Okay. Okay, have a great day. Bye.